So when you say the license renewal is a minor part of it, you're sorry?
A minor, I meant in terms of intellectual difficulty and how to. Obviously, we're going to talk about all the normal things you do, talk in a license renewal. But those, the industry is trained in, my staff is trained in, we've done it before, we'll do it again, etc. But conceptualize the role of the private broadcaster in a meaningful way in the new digital age is something we've never done.
Of the public broadcaster?
Public broadcaster.
Okay. Now, the one thing that Konrad told me that I had to ask him, and he's been very generous about being willing to talk about anything, but I have to ask you this. Can you tell me about the transition to digital?
Yes, I can, and I will gladly do that. Number one, if you are a cable customer or a satellite customer, it won't affect you at all. You won't even notice it. It only applies to those people who get the signal over the air by rabbit ear or by antenna. Secondly, that's roughly 8% of the population. And there, it's only if you live in what we call mandatory market. We have to do this change from digital to analog to free up a huge amount of spectrum called the 700 spectrum, which is actually the most valuable part of the spectrum. Why is it so valuable? Because you go through the walls, etc. It penetrates everything at that frequency. That's why people want it, and we're wasting it on TV right now. We can deliver the same quantity digitally on a very small portion, and we bring up which will mean huge number of revenues to the government in terms of selling auction. Also means that we'll be on the same wavelength as our cousins to the south, who have already auctioned it off. We're going to have massive interference if we don't do that. And lastly, which is also means that people have to know. And I'm very confident we've set a deadline of August 31st, and it's there, it is cast in stone, it will happen on August 1st. You either convert or you go off the air if you want. Everybody knows who they are and what their new frequency is. But the problem is the 92% of Canadians who don't know about it will get very agitated, etc. And so we need a public service campaign. We will shortly issue regulations telling broadcasters, for God's sake, conform Canadians. Tell them, number one, if you're a cable and satellite customer, it has nothing to do with you. Number two, if you get it over the air, here is what you can do to it. You got to buy yourself a set-top box. If you have an old TV, if you have a new TV, you don't need it. And secondly, you may have to find out the frequency. It may change, the channel. But tell them and get in front of the curve so people don't get upset, and we have a wave of emails and people being not knowing out of ignorance.
Right. Okay, so the reason I was meant to ask you that question is that you feel that the broadcasters have not communicated well yet.
Have you heard from your broadcaster? Have you seen any ad? Have you heard anything about this other than just the occasional article in the paper? No.
Okay, but maybe it's, a recency, as they say in commercials, that the time to advise them isn't now, that it maybe starts in the summer.
Yeah, okay, that's exactly right. That's why we're going to put out regulations saying, do it.
Okay.
And I would just want to say here, want to re-emphasize that they need to, you're right, doing too long ahead of time is not on there, and you can't wait too late either.
Okay, so you're just going to tell them to do it, then they'll appeal to the cabinet, then the Supreme Court will get involved. So it'll be another, as you say, you enjoy these things, you'll enjoy this one. Okay.
I won't dignify that with a comment.
Okay. False and misleading news. This has to be one of the weirdest. I read the interventions, and there are a lot of them, and I would say, I didn't read all 4,000 or whatever they are, but the ones I sampled, 60% use the term Fox News. So it's bewildering to me and concerning to me as a journalist, probably in a different way than most journalists seem to be talking about it, but what's the latest on that?
Okay, let's start so we understand it. The Television Broadcasting Act says it has to be high-quality broadcasting. We have this regulation saying you should not have false or misleading news. Why? Because television and radio is very intimate and can have an immediate effect. You remember the War of the Worlds. The radio program in the States caused massive confusion, people jumping in their car and going, it was supposed to be a spoof, but people took it seriously. It just shows you the phenomenal impact that false news can have. So that regulation is there. Has been there for donkey's age. 10 years ago, the parliamentary committee, which looks at regulation, says, that's a violation of the Charter of Rights, do something about it. For 10 years, we've fiddled around, talked with them, found one way excuse or another not to do it. Finally, their patience ran out and said, you must do it. And by the way, if we don't do it, they declare the regulation invalid, totally. So we said, fine, okay, you think it's too broad, we'll narrow it. We say you have to knowingly be false news and it has to be affecting public health, safety, and welfare. Pretty broad categories. Out breaks a storm, somebody reads into it that actually we are trying to lower the standard and we are trying to allow Fox News to blossom. I'm only touching it because I'm forced to by Parliament. For 10 years we've stalled. We've run out of stalling devices. We finally put it out. We put it out for consultation and it gets this wonderful twist, etc. And yesterday night, the committee met and said their advice, in quote, advice, advice which if I don't take it, they declare my regulation violation. They have withdrawn it. All I can say is, thank you, committee. I will withdraw this proposal tomorrow. This is the end of this issue.
Right. Well, that's an astonishing story. So the committee has completely changed its mind and doesn't want the regulation changed. But I don't think it's the end of the issue, because I have to say I worked as a journalist for 27 years. I never knew that there was such a regulation, and I think I was pretty attentive to the standards of my profession.
Yeah, but the idea, as I told you, and the way it cuts is it's the war of the world syndrome. That's really what it's trying to do. Can it be better worded? Probably, but it is like everything. When you deal with these essential rights, the moment you try to define it, you restrict it, and you'll find somebody. And go back to the purpose. The purpose is because TV and radio have such an immediate impact. You want to make sure that journalists don't deliberately put something, and they don't. The journalistic code of ethics prohibits you to. It has, I think, other than War of the Worlds, it has never happened. But it brought home to everybody how dangerous this can be.
That's right, but that wouldn't have applied to War of the Worlds because it wasn't news. It was a drama. Yeah, and in fact, in 1985, there was a case in which not you, but the commission censured, I think it was a Vancouver radio station, who had a talk show host who said that Aboriginal men slept with their sisters. And the commission, I should say, I'm sorry, the commission refused to use the false and misleading news because they said it was opinion. So this is really focused at a very small body of television output or radio output.
Well, but this, as I say, we have all sorts of things that regulate broadcasters. We have the standards, codes, you have the journalistic code, etc. This is really not our business, isn't it? Yes. This is just there as and I wasn't here, and I know nothing about the case that you're talking about. I mean, but as I say, I understand the principle underlying it. I hope we will never have to use it, because it's not really our business to get into that. That's, I think, it should the journalists, the profession should deal with these issues.
But now that people do know that it exists, I'm thinking that you're going to have a lot more cases in front of you than you have had before. So,
we shall see.
But you enjoy this kind of thing.
As I say, this one caught me totally off guard. Yeah. This was a minor change which we thought we had to do, and then it turns out the committee suddenly doesn't. And how Sun News crept into this is beyond me.
Well, my favorite intervention was the one that said that you should be asked whether it was true that Rupert Murdoch bribed you to put this in the... So,
rest assured, I have never met Rupert Murdoch in my life, and I doubt I will.
I know. Well, you've answered the question now, and I'm sure we're all much reassured by that. Okay, let's talk about user-based billing, another thing that has come up. Yeah, has come up. I guess that's one way of saying it. You made a decision, and there are arguments about that decision, as there are always arguments. The one argument that resonated with me, though, is that is there a chance that the decision you made will actually, instead of encouraging the use of all the marvelous tools that Mr. Terzic and Mr. Taps talked about, that by imposing restrictions on heavy use of the internet, you may be in some ways stifling creativity or making the exercise of creativity more difficult. It's not just, you know, the unshaven guy on the couch downloading HD movies. It's people who are really trying to use the internet in creative, artistic ways that need a lot of access to it. Well,
again, this is one of these issues that comes out of nowhere. It's totally misunderstood, and it assumes a life of its own. First of all, it has nothing to do with business. We're only talking about residential users. Secondly, we, against the wishes of the government, who asked us to reconsider, said all the big providers, Bell, Telus, etc., and Telco, have to resell lines to the small ones so that we have competition, because we realize the innovation is by those. And we said, if you impose caps on your own user, then you can also insist that when you resell it, they also impose caps on it. That's what caused the problem, because these small ISPs, large base of the clientele, are heavy users. Now, it seems it doesn't mean you can't use it, you just have to pay more. And that's what we, what I've said before the Are you one of those? And what we said before Parliament, you know, I think it's only fair. If you're a heavy user, you're going to pay more than that. Did we do it right? Is there a better way of doing it? I self-initiated a review, and setting in light of the number of people who are upset with this kind of, maybe we should. Maybe there are better ways, and we open it up. Also, we do not regulate the caps. The caps are set by the, and they also are somewhat difficult to understand. I mean, you have a cap. I guarantee you, anybody who gets it from about 90% of Canadians have a cap. We don't even notice because it's high enough. But for instance, Bell has a cap of 60 in Quebec, but 20 in Ontario. What's the logic of that? Okay. I don't understand it. So as part of this hearing, I hope that we will look at this. We will have a whole education of how it works, and the carriers will also be able to try to rethink their offering. They're already doing it. Shaw announced a consultation, you know. Well, how can we best serve those? Are you going to create an unlimited account? But it's obviously higher than one that with a cap. Right. Or where should the cap be? Is 60 the right, or should it be at 150 or something? But it's clear that you have to differentiate between heavy users and regular users, let's put it that way. How you do it, that's going to be the issue. But do you need to distinguish among heavy users? I understand that you're not saying that it doesn't apply to business, but a lot of creative people are working in their garages, hoping that they will be a business someday. Bell tells me that they expect that the maximum people who would be paying higher rates would be 10%, and it could be lower than 2%. Will you investigate exactly how many Canadians might be affected by this? Well, first of all, when you say that guy is in the garage, is he running a business or not? If you're running a business and you subscribe to anybody, you're supposed to buy a business line. Right. If you don't buy a business line, you're cheating, to be honest. If it's just your personal use, you're not in the business, you're exploring, you're developing, etc., then have to buy yourself access to offer something that suits your purposes. And as I say, if the cap is high enough, if there are various offerings, you pick the one that accommodates your needs.